Hello everybody, I hope you're well. I'm Callum at Repair Wins, and in the video today I'm going to be launching a new series. It's very creatively called Side Projects, and if you can't guess what I'll be doing, then well, maybe you should stop watching, because I'm going to be doing a bunch of side projects. Stuff like this. This is the power switch board from a PSP 1000. I took its power switch. This is a replacement, but I took its power switch and used it to repair a pair of headphones. And instead of throwing this board in the bin and then buying a replacement with the switch already soldered, I thought, why don't I just solder this brand new switch onto here and we'll call it a fix. These are really small fixes that can be done in sort of 5 or 10 minutes, but that wouldn't necessarily be interesting enough or necessarily long enough to make into a decent video. So I thought, why don't I start a series where I bundle a couple, maybe a few small repairs together, and then, you know, that can then be a video covering a few different things. So I guess without any further ado, I'm gonna get started on the PSP 1000 power switch board. I apologise in advance because the lighting isn't great here. You can see shadows and whatnot. It's because I'm working with what I've got. I've literally strung a few light bulbs up around the room. I am looking to improve, but whilst this channel has 80 odd subscribers, doesn't exactly make sense for me to invest a couple £100 in really high quality lighting. That can surely come later. Either way, it's kind of sat in a drawer unused. The power button was working perfectly fine, but I stole it to repair some headphones. And now I'd like to get the power button repaired, and I'm only going to need a few tools to do that. The first one is obviously a new power button, which I've got right here. The next one is some flux. This is Kingro RMA 218, really good stuff, dirt cheap. If you don't know what flux is, it just helps solder flow, so if you're struggling to solder, put some of this on the board and I guarantee you it'll get 10 times easier. And then lastly is a spool of basic solder. I'm going to switch my soldering iron on, and the way that I removed the switch originally was by heating from the bottom of the board. I put some tweezers on the switch and the switch pretty much just, you know, the board fell away from the switch. This is a very basic PCB, so I could afford to do that. As for putting the new switch on, I'm actually just going to solder each pin individually. I mean, I might put solder on the pads and then, you know, heat from below, but I think I am just going to do each pin individually. So I've got my iron set to 365 degrees Celsius. It's a bit hotter than you would normally have to solder, but remember this is lead-free stuff, and lead-free solder doesn't melt as easily. So I'm going to put a tiny bit of solder on my iron, just a touch. I've already put flux on the pads. I'm just going to go over each pad individually, just so the solder's fresh. We're getting rid of the 17-year-old stuff that was on there. And then I'm going to use this stuff, the solder wick. Really thin wick, but it's a very high quality brand. Just to suck away the excess solder. You want the pads to be as smooth and as flat as possible, because that way you can set the switch down flat. So I'm going to do that, and that's all that needs to be done there. That's nice and clean. And then just quickly I will grab a cotton bud, just a dry cotton bud, just to pick the flux up off of the board. And there you go. Now I'm going to set the switch into place, which is really easy to do because it's got these tiny pins on the back for guidance, and there's two little notches in the board. So I literally just put it on, slide it into position, and that's pretty much all I've got to do. I'm going to set it down gently. I'm going to put a drop of flux on with the aim of holding it in place. So that flux is going to shift it around, so I'll move it out of the way, I'll put the flux on, and then I will position it. You don't want to smear the board and cover it in flux, because otherwise you're going to end up filling the switch with flux and it won't work properly. But that switch is now being held in place. I can clean the tip of the iron. Now the tip of the iron's clean, I'm going to put a bunch of solder on it. I'm going to hold the board in my hand. I'm just going to press down on the switch whilst holding the PCB. This is quite difficult to do because I don't have 3 fingers. Try and solder it to the pin. And that is now soldered to the pin. So I'm going to clean it off again. We're going to flow some solder into the other pin on the other side. That's all but going to ensure they're stuck together. And then we'll do this pin here, and we'll do the final pin at the start. That one's flowed. We'll reflow pin number 1. We'll reflow pin number 3. We'll reflow pin number 4. I'm very confident in that repair. Going to turn the iron off, going to get the same cotton bud, clean away the flux. I'm going to give the desk a quick clean off camera, and then we can get the console reassembled. crisis over. If you take a look here, you'll see that this so-called repair technician forgot to plug a cable in, and that's obviously the reason why it's not working. I should have been tipped off when I only connected these buttons, but for some reason I wasn't. So all I need to do is just plug this ribbon cable into here and we'll be away. Let me once again unplug this. We have to remove the screen, unfortunately, and that will then give us access to the cable. I don't like removing these screens, it's a fairly delicate procedure, but I'm going to try and do it without obviously breaking the screen. The idea is that you've got these little clips, 4 of them, on the screen, and you just sort of pry the clip backwards and then lift up on the screen itself. If I break this screen, I'm going to be quite disappointed. I think I might very well need to pop this metal cover that's holding the buttons on off. And then, oh gosh, yeah, there we go, cover's free. And now that the cover's free, this screen should actually come out. Yep, not terribly hard once you know the process. So, let's just, oh god, come on, how much have I got to unplug here? I'm going to lie the screen down like that, and then, oh man, I've got to take this whole bracket off. What a complete and utter waste of time. Right, fine, I guess I'll take the bracket off. God, Sony don't want to make this easy for you, do they? There we are, screen removed. Close the connectors when you're done with them, otherwise you might snap them off. So connectors are closed. Yeah, and then this metal cover has to come off. So we'll do the screws as we see them. And what I'm doing is I'm removing them, and I'm not ordering them or naming them. I'm just placing them down on the desk in the way that they came out. So I mean, I suppose I am ordering them. I think the first ever mod that I did was swapping the housing on my PSP 3000, which is the first games console I ever had. I did a housing swap from the generic black housing to this clear blue one. And to my 15-year-old self, it looked really cool. So luckily I've got a bit of experience doing this. That is now open. Do you know what? Let's just remove the metal piece. Brilliant. That's free. We get this. Fold this around. Plug it in. And then whilst it's in my hands, whilst I've got good access, I'll just plug this board in now. I'm going to hold the wire in place and then close the connector using my prying tool. There we are, so the connector is now closed. And click it into place if possible. And then the metal bracket can just go back on the top and the thing can go back together. So it's going to be gentle, we're going to wiggle the bracket until it sits in place where it's supposed to. I should be able to close this and open it again once the bracket is properly seated. At the moment the switch is a bit stuck. Yeah, not quite. Look, it's not wanting to sit the way that I want it to. So just a bit of sort of wiggling and persuasion. I never really understood how these things work. But it's miraculously going to sit in place and start working. And there you go. Make sure you give it a good 5 or 10 tests. You want to make sure that it's correct, because you really don't want to be taking this thing apart once you've already put it back together. So I'm confident in that repair. Let's start screwing the thing back down. Those screws are in. We're going to get the screen. Going to blow the rubbish off of it. We're going to open up the 2 connectors again. Try and use your fingernails for this and not metal tools if possible. In this instance I am going to use metal tools, it's being a bit stubborn. Please don't tell me the connector's broken. It is, that's damaged. Unbelievable. I didn't even do anything. So these consoles aren't exactly well made. I mean, they're fairly tough, and if you drop them they'll carry on working, but there are just some glaring design defects, like with this screen connector that breaks more often than not. Right, I've managed to make that work. There was an errant pin. I've just pressed down on it and bent it back into position, but that's exactly the reason why I say to keep the connector closed, because if you'd left it open it probably would have just fallen off. Always easiest to do the big connector first. Now I'm trying obviously not to touch the screen itself because otherwise it's going to go all fingerprinty. In fact, do you know what? We'll do the little cable, which is just for the backlight. But these are not very forgiving, unfortunately. Now it's plugged in. And now that it is, I'm going to try sort of... Oh God, how many times have I said it? You need free hands to do repair. You need free hands if you want to do it properly. I only have 2 of them. Right, that's roughly in the connector, so now I can just push it into place the rest of the way. And I'm just pushing on the lip that's sticking out. I'm not pressing down on the cable. I'm just barely using any pressure, pushing down on the red lip. And now that that's in place, luckily I can click it shut. We'll lie it down, and we're not going to reassemble the console. We're going to test at this point. Oh, okay. It's because it wasn't charging the battery, because there's no battery in the unit. And as you can see, surprisingly, the screen still works. God, these things are fragile. Built by Sharp. So Sharp were fined for colluding with a couple of other companies to keep the price of these LCDs artificially inflated. So it's not just in the modern day that companies engage in scummy behaviour. You'll be glad to hear that companies have always been scummy. Okay, that's in. And that side's in. Happy days! Right, now let's clip this into place. Do you know what? I'm going to jinx it and say this is going fairly well. We can now put the front cover on. And before doing an assembly, we can just test the buttons and stuff. So, D-pad works fully. Can't test the analog stick. X works to enter. Circle to go back. Fun fact, by the way, in Japan, circle is X and X is circle. They both do the opposite of what they do in the West. Triangle, there's no save data, so I can't hit triangle. Here we go, though, settings. And I don't think square is going to do anything for me, but there's no reason why this shouldn't work. And we'll just flick up, and the console goes into standby. We'll do it again. And the console switches on, so you can see this is a repair well done. This is the point in the video at which I screw the console back together, so let's just pour the screws onto the desk. You've got one silver one that's a lot shorter than the others. That goes in the battery compartment, and it goes beneath the battery connector, so it goes here. Happy days. You've got another silver screw which goes at the bottom of the console in the middle, which is here, and you'll notice I'm squeezing down on the housing. That's just to hold it closed. Put the screw in. There we are. And then you've just got 4 black screws, and I don't need to tell you where they go because there's only 4 holes left. And I've realised I am actually missing a screw here. There's supposed to be one at the bottom, look. Bring the console here. Looks alright to me. Oh my god, no! There's no way I'm that stupid. I've not put these things in. Oh, and I've just found the screw as well. Right, that can go in there. Let me put these things in off camera, and then we'll finally be done with this saga. Ugh. I might just be able to get away with taking the screws at the top out. So that's what I'm going to try. Right, so they're out. I'm going to open the UMD drive. Yeah, and hopefully I should be able to flex the housing enough. So this is the right hand side of the console. There you go. Now we'll try this side again. Remember, if you can get it fixed without having to take it apart a second time, you're saving a lot of time, and time is money. So that button is in, but it's not clicking. Now it's clicking. There we are, they both click. Brilliant. That didn't exactly go to plan, but it's all back together. I only made 1,382 mistakes. Get the console switched back on. I'll set the date and time and so on correctly, and I'm going to put this somewhere to charge. Of December, there we go. December 13th, 2025, imagine that. So we can now switch the console off. I'm pleased with that repair, I am very pleased with it. Next up is a really simple repair. So if I show you this side, you can see it's rock solid. But if I show you this side, it's really loose. That's obviously no good. And whilst it still works fine, I'd like to get it taken apart before it becomes an issue. You might just be thinking tighten this sort of tighten this piece down, but it's not that piece that's loose. So if I unscrew the soldering iron from here, you can see that it's the socket itself that's loose, and that needs to be remedied. Alright then, as you know, the idea is that we just need to take this apart. But I'm just using a JST screwdriver here. It looks like a Phillips, it's not quite a Phillips. And I'm going to remove the 4 screws. There's just 4 screws on the bottom cover and this comes apart. I've taken the 4 screws out, I've got them here, and a little trick is just to put them into a pot. So I'll put that there, and I'll put this spare pot next to it. Now that that's all done, we can get it taken apart. So it is literally just 4 screws. I'm going to flip it over, and then hopefully the lid should just come off. And, well, yeah, Christ, without any hassle whatsoever, the lid comes off. So I'm going to remove this. We're going to tilt it forwards, and hopefully, yeah, I shouldn't even need to unplug anything, look, because I've just got access right here. So I can just grab some pliers, tighten that up, and we're away. All I'm going to do, needle nose pliers are going to go on, I'm going to twist. That's simple. So I'm going to try my best to hold the socket in place, and this really shouldn't take too long. Gosh, it's actually quite loose. I just sort of tighten it by hand first of all. So you'll get it to the point where it's you can't move it by hand, and then you just put the tool on and you send it the rest of the way. I've really not got much leverage here though, it's a bit awkward. I did actually manage to clamp down quite hard on that, but I will just show you what I did. So open up the needle nose pliers, put them on, grab down, twist around. So yeah, that is done now. You can see that this is absolutely rock solid, locked in place. Its neighbour is a tiny bit loose, so I'll just sort that out as well. Happy days, they're both done. So all you've got to do is just get your power connector, put it back where it belongs. I really wish this thing had a switch built in. I know the newer versions do, but mine is obviously quite old. Right, that's all squeezed back together. Make sure this is sturdy. Make sure all of the seams line up. And now that they do, I'm just going to put the 4 screws back in. There we are, that's all done. Here we are then. You can see that this is absolutely rock solid. So I'm going to get the soldering iron plugged in now. I'll do it left-handed just so my hand doesn't get in the way of the camera. I can push this in. And then when it pops, that means it's engaged in the thread, and now you can tighten it up. Some people will get their pliers and really send it home, but please don't do that. You'll just end up marring up the surface, and then you could cut yourself on it. And also, you really don't need to. It makes a very secure connection just by doing it with your hand. You won't go out of your way to do this, but I can move the entire machine by these connectors, and they don't budge an inch. They don't even budge a millimetre. There we go then. That's all I've got time for today. I hope you found the video useful. The PSP ended up taking a lot longer to sort out than I wanted to. In the real world, it was only 20 minutes, and it was nice to sharpen up the skills. You know, on the ZIF connector for the screen that got damaged, I just pushed down on it slightly with my tool, and that put that right. But to assemble the console and take it back apart and put it together, you know, do the same thing 20 times. I didn't literally do it 20 times, of course, but, you know, a little bit of attention to detail would have saved me some issues. Now, I addressed that briefly in the editing, so that hopefully you don't make the same mistake, but let it be a lesson to you. Just make sure you're being thorough as the stuff's going back together. You want full attention on the task at hand. It did all work out fine in the end, though. And then as for the soldering station, it took me literally 10 minutes to do, and that's in the real world. Only took a few minutes to edit that bad boy down, and yeah, we're away. I've used it maybe 15 times since doing the recording, and you know, not having any problems with it. You may have noticed, on a completely unrelated topic, that the audio quality of this outro is a bit better. I made a small investment. I bought a clip-on microphone. It came as part of this sort of kit here, which I will cover at some point in the future if it does turn out to be a good investment. I think that so far it's paid off. Obviously, for the videos that follow this one, or at least the stuff that's coming out sort of in a month's time, when I've gotten through all of my old footage, you're going to notice a decent improvement in the audio quality. The picture quality will follow. I've not got any plans to upgrade the lighting just yet, but obviously I'll do that at some point in the future. If the video was useful to you though, feel free to leave me a like. I'm not going to sit here and beg you to do it. You're a free person. Do what you want. If you'd like to see where the channel ends up going, then yeah, maybe you ought to hit that subscribe button. I think I've got I'd like to say the video that follows this one is a continuation of the Sleeper PC series. I end up mucking around with the power supplies. I got there in the end. I managed to make the thing work, but my word, was it a pain. So if you want to see me struggle and then eventually get to the bottom of the problem, and then furthermore tell you how to avoid all the problems I, came across, then yeah, you'll just have to subscribe and come back in maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks time. Until then, that's all I've got for you today. So until the next time, I'll see you later. Take care for now, and goodbye.